Okay, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
We are starting Shin Mem Hey Seif Chet. Just two really short things from yesterday, just to clarify. If you have for a Rishus Hayachid, if it's a complete circle, then the diameter must be 5.6 tfachim, because you need to end up with 4x4, a perfect square, completely inside without having a deformed shape. Okay. Right? Because that's the hypotenuse of a 4x4 is 5.6. And then, on the issue of tel hamit laket, so there was discussion. We know it goes by, in order to be a wall on an incline, to count as a wall, we know it has to be 10 tfachim high. But if it's on an angle, what is the angle? So it turns out it's either 22.6 or 24.6 degrees. Depends on your dalar amos, because it has to be within 10 tfachim dalar amos. That's the minimal incline. So where is that 4 amos? Do you go by the slope, or do you go by the flat plane or the run, the floor? So it happens to be a machloket. If you look in the Rishonim, you will not see it clearly. I mean, I guess it depends how you read the Rishonim. But from the Gemara and the Rishonim, it's completely not clear. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so, I don't know. But I will just point out the Mishnah Berurah, the Orach Chaim, Art Scroll, and Oz Vahadar, and others, the Shut Maralbach, point out it goes by the slope. So that turns out to be 24 degrees, and approximately 24, 25. If you're looking, you can look it up anywhere you like. Art Scroll Hebrew, for example, Art Scroll and Dirshu, they do mention it is a machlokus, such as the Merkevet HaMishnah, says it goes by the floor, the run, and Sfas Emes has a mistapik. Anyway, L'maisa, it's not a huge nafkamina anyway. I'm sure it didn't come up too many times in world history that it was exactly 23 degrees. But anyways, that's the nafkamina. Chet. Mevo'ot harechavim. Sheyesh, 16 amma, that are 16 wide. Right? So we're dealing now with what is a Rishus Harabim. So we're talking about, so if you have these mavois, these alleyways, there's 16, the width, it has to be, right, for Rishus Harabim, it has to be 16 amos wide, to be doma to the diglei, the machane of the Jews in the desert. So therefore, however, umit katzrim biktsatan. So most of it is, or a large portion is 16 amos. However, part of it is less. Ve'ein bahem 16 amma. Part of it, it gets narrow. Let's say you have a road. It's normal for the road to be, a certain significant width, and then along the way, in the middle, it gets more narrow. Yesh omrim she'im, how much? So the Mishnah Berurah just says it has to, but the minimum is at least 13 or 13 and a third. We'll say 13 is the bare minimum. If part of it gets to be below 13, and it could even be 10, but anyways, the Mishnah Berurah, we'll see later on, but the Mishnah Berurah here says 13. That if it's anywhere gets less than 13, then it can't be Rishus Harabim. But as long as its ranges between 16 and 13 or more, so then Yesh Omrim She'im Orkan La'orach Rishus Harabim Harei Rishus Harabim. So as long as it continues, because basically what it means is a little portion is a little difficult for the Rabbim to travel through it. But if it gets too narrow, then it's too difficult and it loses the shame. But it's still very usable. So that's why it's still good. Tet. Mavot rechavim 13 amot ushlish. So here's the 13 and the third. As long as it's that wide, ushnei rashi mufulashim Rishus Harabim shehu rachav 16, and it connects to Rishus Harabim, which is 16. Yesh omrim shehu Rishus Harabim. So here you have an instant when the whole road is actually only 13 and a third, and it can still be Rishus Harabim, because the first case was it was one long continuum. So the main road, so the whole thing was going straight. The main part is, most of it's 16, and part of it gets a little narrow. Here, the whole thing is more narrow, but it still has to be 13 and a third. And it's okay because on both ends, both ends of this road, it's open into a Rosh Hashanah, which is 16 wide. Okay, good. Kol davar shehu Rosh Hashanah. Anytime we're talking about Rosh Hashanah, anything in there, im eino gavoa shlosha tfachim, if the ground doesn't go up 3 tfachim, filohim kotzim utzo Hashem rabim dorsin. Even you have thorns, waste, excrement, whatever, it's on the road, and you consider like dirt. So in other words, no one's going to touch it, no one's moving it, it's there, so it becomes part of the ground. Even though it's there, and even though people will not step over there, that doesn't stop it. It's still part of the ground. And chashuvim kikarka v'haver Rosh Hashanah. Since it's below 3 tvachim, it's considered Rosh Hashanah. Anything in the general area of the Rosh Hashanah is still Rosh Hashanah, even if there's one little items in there that people are going to obviously veer around it. So that's still Rosh Hashanah, right? As long as we're below 3 tvachim, that's Rosh Hashanah. Ve'im hu gavoa shlosha. But let's say you have a step, you have items in the way, and the height is 3 tvachim. U'mishlosha ad tisha. So from 3 to 9, v'lo tisha b'chlal. If it's exactly 9, we'll see in a moment. But if it ranges from 3 to 8.9, whatever, 8.99. So then, what is that considered? It's not considered Rishus Harabim. Between 3 and 9, it's Have Karmelit. That's Imu Rachav Arba Arba Have Karmelit. If this mound, this object that's there, cabinet we had clear the other day, if it's 4 by 4, then it has a din of 4 by 4 tfachim, then it has a din of a Karmelit. But if it's not 4 by 4 wide, then have mekom petur. Now you have this item, it could be a mound, a pole, a pillar, in the middle of the Rosh Hashanah, and it's exactly 9 tfachim, tisha tfachim mitzumtzamim, v'rabim mekatfim alav, and people actually are using it. Not that it's just usable. Again, it's machlokas. A lot of things are machlokas, but let me say it means it's actually it is used. It doesn't mean it has to be used second, but in general, it is used either for people to lean on it, people to put stuff on it. So, right, Mishnah Berurah, Orach Chaim, they say it has to be, Lamaisa has to at least be used in general. Havei Rishus Harabim afilo eno rachav arba'a. So even if it's not 4, since it's inside the Rishus Harabim, and people do use it, if it's exactly 9 tvachim high, then that's also a din of Rishus Harabim, because it's, again, Rishus Harabim is where people are walking and people are using. So you're not walking, you're not stepping on this, but you're using it for the walkers who are going through it. There is an opinion in the Torah that between 9 and 10 tfachim, it has the whole same din. It's not just exactly 9, it's 9, anywhere from 9 to 10. But this is, right. Mishnah Berurah points out this is not the halacha. Okay. Where do we say? Sorry. No, wait a second.
So we're talking about Arba Tfachim 1?
We're talking about between 9 and 10. So the question is it a derai?
That's high.
9 to 10 tfachim high.
We're talking about Arba Tfachim?
Yes. No. Well, you see, arba. So the height is 9 to 10. The width, you want to know about 4 by 4?
4 by 4. Tfachim or amos?
No, tfachim.
Yeah, so...
Arba,
and then switch a few in Arba with the hay. There's a switch there.
I did that in the Shulchan Aruch, did a switch.
No,
Maybe my version is different than yours. You're in the V'yesh Misha Omer, I'll read it again. Afilu Eino Rachav Arba'a. Right.
Which is honest.
No, Arba'a is Tvachim.
Right, but before it was Rachav Arba, that was that hay.
Mine has the hay. Okay. So, So anyway, so when we're talking about 4 by 4, on all these, in this entire seif, it's all tfachim. And then, so depending on the height and the width, it could be Rosh Hashanah, could be Carmelis, or it could be a Makom Patur. So the Yesh Bisha Omers, Dehu Hadin Lagavoa Mitisha Vadasara Varabi Makatim Alav, people are using it from 9 to 10. So then, according to this opinion, which is not the halacha, Have Rosh Hashanah, I feel Ein Orach Arba'ah, since it's being used and it's in the Rosh Hashanah, then it has a din of Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't matter how wide it is. Now, when you get to above 10 tfachim, it's never going to be Rosh Hashanah. It's never going to be a Carmelis either. Once you hit 10 and above, so then it depends. This amud, this pillar in the Rosh Hashanah, or this object in the Rosh Hashanah, if it's 10 high, if it's wide 4 by 4 tfachim, then it's Rosh Hashanah. Ve'im lav, and if not, havei makom patur, and if it's less than 4 by 4 tfachim, then it's a makom patur. Afilu yeshbo makom kedei lachok lashlimu le'arba'a. Machlokes in the Gemara, Shabbos daf kuf, but l'maisa the halacha is, we don't say chokakim lahashlimu. We don't add. Let's say you have a pillar, right, that's 2 by 2, or it could be 4 wide, but it's only, the other dimension, it's only 2 tfachim, for example. You have a pillar right next to a wall. You don't say, well, since the wall, let's say the wall is 2 tfachim deep, you don't add to it, imaginary. Let's say you have a hole in the side of a wall. I think we learned already. Let's say you have a wall. We'll start afresh. You're in there's a Rosh Hashanah, and along the Rosh Hashanah, there's a wall that's touching, that's from a house. So the wall is part of Rosh Hashanah, and it's hitting adjacent to the Rosh Hashanah. If you throw something from the Rosh Hashanah, and it sticks to the side of the wall, then that wall, whatever sticks to the side of the wall, is still part of the Rosh Hashanah. Right. It's still part of the Rosh Hashanah. You know what? We'll get to that case. Never mind. Let's not complicate these. But the point is, we never, even, whenever the case will come up, we never say chokakim. You have a little bit of a hole in the side of a wall, and let's say it makes a difference if it's makom patir. The side of the wall, if you make a little hole in the side of the wall, if it's above 3 tfachim, then it could be a carmelis, it could be a makom patur, depending how big that hole is. So if you just throw something into the hole of a side of the wall, we don't say, you look at what that hole is. If it's 4 tfachim or not 4 tfachim. You don't say, let's see how thick the wall is, and we imaginary chokakim, we add it as if we pretend since the wall is 4 tfachim, why we imagine the hole to be 4 tfachim. In other words, bottom line, we never dig into to walls to add to the dimension. What you see is what you get. That's a machlokas in the Gemara, but that's the halacha. Okay, I'm sure it'll come up again. Let's see. Okay, Yud Aleph. Guma Birshus Harabim. If you have a pit, a hole in the ground, in the Rosh Hashanah, Im Eina Amuka Shalosh Have Rishus Harabim. If it's not 3 tfachim deep, it's part of the Rishus Harabim. In other words, for Rishus Harabim, you basically get the ground level and 3 tfachim above, up to 3 tfachim above, and up to just below, just less than 3 tfachim below as well. It's like a little step in the ground. That's makes no difference. That's all considered part of the ground, part of the Rosh Hashanah. Mi shalosh ad asara. Now, what happens if it's between 3 and 10? Now, this 9 issue is if it's above the ground. Below the ground, you don't have this exactly 9 quirk into the halacha. But here we are, 3 to 10, up to 10, but not including 10. 3 to 10, a ditch, a hole in the ground. What is it? So it can't be Rosh Hashanah. So what is it? Im rechava, and it's not 10 tfachim, right? We learned if it would be 10 tfachim and 4 by 4, we'll get there again. Im rechava arba have karmelis. If it's 4 by 4 tfachim, wide, an area of a solid 4 by 4 square, and it's between 3 and 10, that's a karmelit. That's the Rabbanan, okay, can't carry into there, from one rishus to another, or Daled Amos. V'im lav, if it's less than 4 by 4, you just have one little narrow hole, you just dig out a little hole, have a makom petur, that's a makom petur. And you're allowed to take from the Rosh Hashanah and put it into a makom petur. That's not a problem. So if you have a little narrow hole in the ground that's deeper than 3 tfachim, it's not a problem to take from Rosh Hashanah and put it in there. That's called a makom petur. V'im hi amuka asara. But if the depth is 10, so then it depends. If it's less than 4 by 4, it's also a makom petur. Havei Rosh Hashanah, but if it's v'hushitei rachava arba'a. But if it's deeper than 10, and it's 4 by 4, that's a Rishus Hayachid. That we learned already, and that's a Rishus Hayachid. And it doesn't matter if people use this hole or not use this hole. Once it's deeper than 3 Tfachim, it loses the shame of Rishus Harabim. Okay. The Mishnah Berurah points out something interesting. I mean, it's the Gemara. Also, Daf Kuf and Shabbos, it's a lot there. It points out, let's say you have a hole. And we'll discuss later, came up with a case we mentioned earlier about having a large kli in a hole. Let's say you have a hole, and the depth is, it's a Rosh Hashanah. You have a huge hole, it's more than 10 tfachim deep, and it's more than 4 by 4. Proper Rosh Hashanah, a hole that's a Rosh Hashanah. What happens if you fill it up with water? So it makes no difference. The water does not mevatel the walls. You have walls of 10 tfachim, and here's a Rosh Hashanah. You can't throw from a Rosh Hashanah into this hole that's 4 by 4 and 10 deep. That's Rosh Hashanah. That'd be Chayav Chatas. Okay, that's if it's filled with water. Why? Because you still see the walls. It's still nikar that there are walls there. What happens if you fill it up with fruit? So the Gemara says, if you fill it up with fruit, and you don't see the walls anymore, it's not nikar, then it loses the din of a Rosh Hashanah on a deraisa level. Mishnah Berurah says there's still an Isser Derabanan to throw it on top of these, on the fruit, because what happens if, theoretically, someone can take away the apples or the fruit that's there, and then you end up with this wall on Shabbos. So he says there is a concept that it's an Isser Derabanan. But what's interesting, so here you have, and that's seems pretty clear, that's what the Mishnah Berurah paskins, and pretty clear from most of the Rishonim, that once it's filled up with fruit, even lo nisbato, you're going to take the fruit away later. But since it's full right now, and it's not nikar that you have walls, then it's no longer a Rishus Hayachid for Shabbos. Mishnah Berurah points out, the Rashba says, but it can't be that you can use it on Shabbos. If you can use it on Shabbos, then it's not batel. It's not, if you would fill up this hole with dirt, obviously everyone would say you lose the walls. But here you have fruit you're going to take. So the Rashba says at least for Shabbos it has to be where it's like muksa and you can't move it. Otherwise, if you're going to take it on Shabbos, then he holds it is mevatel, the mechitzos. And the Mishnah Berurah also points out in Shar Tzion that that's only if you fill up the hole completely with fruit, and now you don't see the walls anymore. But if it's only a little bit filled up, I don't know where you draw the line, but he says if it's a little bit filled up, then the fruit is as if it's not there, and you see the walls, and the walls are there, and that is the Rosh Hashanah. If you cover it, you put a board over it, then for sure you're mevatel it, and it's not a Rosh Hashanah. Okay. Yud Bet. Rosh Hashanah eina tofeset ela ad asara. Rosh Hashanah only goes up to 10 tfachim. Does not go any higher. That's at the most. Aval, like in other words, you have a wall next to a Rosh Hashanah, and you throw something and it sticks to the wall. So that's an example where you can have a Rosh Hashanah. Normally, Rosh Hashanah, we just said, goes up to 3 Tfachim. And that's it. Minus that one little 9 thing, Tefach issue. But basically, the Rosh Hashanah never practically goes above 3. What's the main exception? It could go up to 10. How? If you have a wall and you throw something and it sticks to the wall. So let's say you throw something from a Rosh Hashanah. That's the case. You're standing in a Rosh Hashanah and you throw something that sticks, and it sticks to a wall that's in a Rosh Hashanah. So then, if where it sticks to the wall, it's anywhere between 0 and 10 Tfachim, and it's in Rosh Hashanah, then you're chayav. Because there is a Rosh Hashanah up to 10. The issue is though, but if you're going to put it over a pillar that's, let's say, 6 Tfachim high, so now that turns into a Carmelis or a Makom Patur. But if it's sticking to a wall, there's no flat platform. If you have something flat that's holding it up, then that'll take it out of the Rosh Hashanah if it's above 3 Tfachim. But here, when you have a wall, it's not resting on any platform, it's just hanging in the air, but it's resting on the wall, but it's stuck to it. That's when you can have a case of up to 10. But no matter what, there's no exception. Once you're above 10 Tfachim, have a Makom Patur. It's a Makom Patur. Okay. Yud Gimel. Chorim shivktalim klape Rosh Hashanah. So, it goes like this, which I started to mention. I should have waited. Let's say you have the wall of a house, and it's along the Rosh Hashanah. And you have a little bit of a hole in the wall. What does that mean? You have a little carve out in the outside wall of your house that's adjacent to the Rosh Hashanah. It's lined up with the Rosh Hashanah. It's continuous to the Rosh Hashanah. We're not talking about a hole that goes all the way through, right? If you had a hole that goes all the way through the house, where you can wave to people, and one side is Rosh Hashanah and one side is Rosh Hashanah, what is it? We learned yesterday, it's for sure a Rosh Hashanah. Here you have, it's just a carve out under the wall on the side of the Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't go all the way through. So, if it's above 3 Tfachim, it doesn't have the din of Rosh Hashanah. Right? If it's stuck to the side of the wall, it would. But here it goes inside a hole, and it's resting on something flat. So therefore, the Rosh Hashanah only goes up to 3, and that's it. Ella, so what happens? The halacha is it follows based on the width. Which means, if it's 4 by 4, it would be, if that hole in the wall would be 4 by 4, it would be a Carmelite. If it's less than 4 by 4, it's a Makom Patur, but it's above 3 Tvachim. Yud Dalet, Ezuhi Carmelite. Let's learn a little bit about what a Carmelite is. Makom She'enu L'Charabim. It's a place where people don't walk. That's the main idea. It's not big enough. I mean, really, it's whatever doesn't fit Rosh Hashanah and doesn't fit Rosh Hashanah. But we're going to give it a description also. It's a place where people are not majorly walking through. Kegon, what's an example? A yam, a river, an ocean, or a river, or a lake, all the same. Obika, or a valley that doesn't have walls. In other words, open field, doesn't have walls. Vitztavanit, v'itztaba. Perush, itztavanit. What's an itztavanit? It's makom shelifnei chaniyot yashvim sham hasocharim. So they had, it's more common in those days than it is now, but obviously it depends where you are. You have these stores, and in front of them, they hang out with their merchandise. They sit there. V'itztabahu makom shemanichem alav prakmatya. And the itztaba is the actual, the platform. It could be a table, it could be, curtains that you hang, from pillars, and you're able to hang merchandise, on the fabric, whatever it is. It's places where people are sitting and having their merchandise right outside in front of their store, and it's taking up the space in the Rosh Hashanah. So people can't walk over there. That's what it's made for. So it's a place where people can't walk. Shalifnei ha'amudim Rosh Hashanah. And it's in front of the amudim that are in Rosh Hashanah. Right, next to the stores, and so it's not in the main walking area. V'hi rechava arba'a v'gavoa mishlosha ve'ad asara. So it has to be where it's at least 4 by 4 wide, and this is a new case. Or any place in Rosh Hashanah that is 4 by 4, that's between 3 and 10 tefachim. Okay, another category of a Carmelite. The Karen Zavi Tesmucha L'Rishus Harabim. And this is a... one second. I'm just going to first read the full line. The Karen Zavit, well, it's like a corner or a carve out, which is next to the Rishus Harabim. Ukegon mavut sheish lehem shalosh mechitzot ve'en lehem lechi akora b'revi'it. Or you have an alleyway that's off of Rishus Harabim, which only has 3 walls. Or Rishus Harabim shehi mekora. Or a Rishus Harabim which is covered up. V'tel sheyesh bo arba al arba'ah ve'ena gavoa asara. Or you have any kind of a mound where people walk up. And obviously it has enough of a slope that turns it into a wall. So it's 4 by 4, but it's not 10 high. Because if it be 10 high, it would be Rishus HaYachid, right? Because the ground would act as your walls. V'chen charitz shehu, there's a ditch in the ground, which is arba'al arba'ah ve'eno amok asara. And it's 4 by 4 ditch, a hole in the ground that's 4 by 4, but it's not deep 10. Because if it be 10 tfachim, it would be a Rishus HaYachid. So all these cases are all a case of a Carmelite. Rishus Harabim cannot have a ceiling if it's all covered up. And the Karen Zavit is, let's say, you're walking along the Rishus Harabim, and then you have like a jut out. Let's say you have a row of houses. There's great pictures in the Oz Vahadar, but you don't really need a lot of pictures for everything. You just have a straight column of houses right along Rishus Harabim. So everywhere that's next to the houses is all Rishus Harabim. The fact that you have a little bit of a sidewalk doesn't make a difference. It's just a step that's less than 3 tfachim. So everything there is Rishus Harabim. Unless, of course, it is an area where people can't walk so easily. That's another story. So you have, let's say, a row of houses, and one house has a further setback. So that further setback is a Carmelis. Okay, fine. I guess we'll stop.
Good.